Hey Google!
Yes, how can I help?
Can you introduce our presentation?
Sure. Welcome to our presentation. With yours truly, MC Google Assistant. Meet our presenters, Sunny, George, Evan, Caleb, and Ashwarya. Please give them a round of applause. Let's get this started. Ashwarya, you're up.
Right, so hi everyone. Like Google Assistant helped us out. My name is Ashwarya. I'm here with Sunny, Evan, George, and Caleb, and today we're going to be talking about some strategic objectives for Google. And it is advised by this advising team, GCase Advisors, and we're here today to start this board meeting and get things rolling. So first we'll start with George going over some strengths and also some opportunities we see on the horizon.
Yeah, so let's talk about the main opportunity. So recently, Donald Trump was arrested, as you can see, and the Pope is wearing a lot of drippy clothing. But actually, these are not real images, as you all know. These are generated by so-called generative AI, which is the big opportunity that Google faces. But if you look at these pictures, it's like, why would you want to generate the Pope wearing Prada? It's like, is it useless? It's not. Let me show you why. Imagine that you're planning a trip to Santiago, Chile. Okay, so you pull up your web browser and you look, flights, restaurants, rental cars, you've all done this. You've planned a trip at some point, and it gets so hard, you have to keep all these things in your brain. It's really annoying, right? So you probably like Calvin, I don't want to go to Google, I hate Google, I'd rather do anything than go to Google, okay? Because it's really complex. But wait, what if there's a better way? Pounce, generative AI. Look, instead of doing all that, you could just plug in your query into one of these services, such as ChatGPT, such as Hobbs here, plan our trip to Santiago, and the generative AI will interface with all the systems called plugins to automatically plan your trip. So think of the possibilities. Look at all these different interfaces that technology can communicate with, and it will expand and it can do anything. So if you think about where Google is at this point, it's probably kind of a precarious situation, right? I mean, what if Google could be replaced? So therefore, we think this opportunity is also our main threat, which is the threat of generative AI replacing our service. And that will tie into our strategic objective. So let me now talk about our strengths and weaknesses. So here's what I think is our main weakness. This pie chart, each of the pie charts, the white portion shows the revenue of that company that is its largest revenue source. Okay, let that process a bit. Which one do you think is Google? These are all big tech companies. Yeah?
The gray.
Not the gray. The white shows the majority revenue. Yes? The green, yes, exactly. Google gets a vast majority of its revenue from advertising, unlike the other big tech companies, which have more diversified revenue. We think this is a weakness because in AI alignment, AI having good ethics is important. And as Larry and Sergey said in their very first paper about Google, we believe the issue of advertising causes enough mixed incentives that it is crucial to have a competitive search engine that is transparent in the academic realm. So clearly this is a big problem. Now, although we have this weakness, we do believe that we have the strengths to be well positioned in winning the generative AI race. This is for three reasons. First, we have really great cash flow. If you look at our cash flow to market cap, cash balance, and cash to assets, we dominate the competition. That means when the investment opportunities come up for generative AI, we can capitalize on them. Second, we have lots of users. Look at our user base. It's higher than every other tech company. That means when we release a generative AI product, we have the largest audience. Finally, these new technologies require great talent, people, to research the technologies. And if you look at Glassdoor metrics, across all of the metrics, we are the best company out of the competition. Now that I've talked about our SWOT analysis, let's move on to our strategic plan.
All right, so as a reminder to you guys, I know we've presented this multiple times already, but we are aiming for what we want to call Project Descartes, which is an increase in 50% in the market share for generative AI applications in 36 months or 3 years for Alphabet. So how are we going to do this? Well, we need to focus, again, on drilling down on the 5 functions that we have that are key and essential to any project, honestly. And first, we'll start with human resources, as headed by Sunny here. The goal that we have decided to identify is to develop and implement an AI-based training program to be completed by 95% of strategy-based employees within 12 months. What does that mean? Well, that means using AI applications, developing AI applications for the sake of internal benefit, right? Before we go big, before we expand, we gotta start at home, right? We gotta start at the home base. We gotta make sure our AI products work, our AI features work internally. And the best way we can do that is by continuing to strengthen our talent through training programs that are created by artificial intelligence. Now, the second component is obviously finance, headed by George over there. The goal here is to increase Google Cloud revenue by 2 times, with 50% of the increase due to incremental revenues from new generative AI features over 36 months. This is where we expand from internal expansion to external expansion, right? We are now starting to find ways to integrate AI features, generative AI features, into the products that we sell to clients, where we ultimately get revenue streams. Right? Now, the goal here is to potentially integrate a lot of AI features to, as we mentioned, Google Cloud. So Google Docs, Google Presentation, Google Sheets, etc. We've already seen our competitors do this. Microsoft has, after its acquisition of ChatGPT, already decided to acquire and integrate some of their AI features into their products, and so we like to do likewise. The third is operations, headed by myself, and the goal here is to develop an AI platform that can handle at least 10 petabytes of data in 18 months. Now, of course, to fuel all of this expansion, we gotta make sure we have the fuel to do that, right? And that starts at home, that starts at the data centers, that starts at our ability to handle data. A very well-known rule in computer science and in machine learning in general is the rule of 10, by which you need at least 10 times the amount of data in training data as you do in order to make any parameters or degrees of freedom in the models for your data, right? And so that means a lot of data. Now the fourth is marketing, and the goal here is to develop an AI marketing platform that boosts conversion rate by 25%. Likewise, with our financial directive, this is us trying to implement specific AI features that we've developed into our product offerings. And in this case, as we've mentioned, since advertising is the bulk of our revenue, this is going to be the most monumental. Accenture did a study recently where they posited that 91% of users would highly prefer to use platforms that have AI-based recommendations for their advertisements, right? That's a big sway for advertising platforms that can implement AI. And last but not least, of course, we have research headed by Aishwarya. The goal here is to generate an ROIC, return on investment, invested capital, of 25% in generative AI investments from the currently stated ROIC around 14%. Now, the benchmark in the industry of return on invested capital for AI investments is around 15 to 20%. So if we can get a 25% ROIC, that'll ensure that we get enough cash flow that we can sustain the expansion indefinitely into the future, and ultimately execute Project Descartes, increasing our market share by 50% within the next 36 months.
So Evan covered what we want to do, but now it's time to talk about, can we actually do it? So the implementation of our strategic objective. So beginning with our Gantt chart, just to give a brief overview of each function's first objective, and just talking about the main takeaways from looking at this visual representation of the timelines. We see that with the HR function, the employee training will be a pretty long-term objective with consecutive steps that need to be completed one after the other. With finance, we see that the objective of increasing accuracy in Google's AI function will also be long-term and a continuous objective. With operations, we see that this is a little bit more time-consuming, so like different aspects of the AI platform will be needed to help improve servers and chips. In terms of marketing, we also see that there's consecutive stages of assessment, research, analysis, all which lead to completion of the marketing objective, which is boosting conversion rates. And then for research, we see that both the objective of consolidation and the objective of research divestitures will occur simultaneously. And then we see that there are risks associated with these as well. Overall, generally, the risks are just associated with certain steps being not completed on time or not being able to move on to the next step of the implementation if there is a delay with something that is occurring.
We also took a look at some market movements for Google's parent company, Alphabet. So we found some key takeaways from this as well. Firstly, it's a pretty obvious key takeaway, but something that we wanted to also consider in our analysis. But it does look like Google's a massive company. They trade very closely on kind of their performance. And it doesn't seem like Google's going to go despite, as George mentioned, their increased search ad percentage of their total revenue. So that is something we wanted to consider when we thought about the risks and also just the risk of the overall project in terms of kind of cash outlay and that kind of liquidation risk. The second key takeaway we found was that when we look at some of the market movements in recent times, we see that Google's Project Bard actually had a significant impact on market movements. And we want to consider this moving forward as any project betas or kind of prototypes that are kind of put out by Google in terms of generative AI will have a significant impact on movements. So that is something that Google needs to consider from a research and development, but also finance standpoint.
We also looked at articles related to each of the 5 functions to look at what each department is currently having in the works and how those projects or recent news might relate to our overall objective of generative AI. And so for HR and finance, we see that there's a lot of recent news headlines related to the layoffs that Google has experienced. And so this definitely impacts HR as it impacts employee morale and productivity. It impacts finance because these layoffs will result in cost cutting when it comes to salary and benefit costs. And then with operations, we see something really interesting is happening with Google UK. So they're operating near carbon-free energy, and this actually has an indirect impact on generative AI because by increasing the energy sourcing and having it be more robust, this helps fuel the back end of our objective. And with marketing, we see that AI will be utilized when it comes to creating more creative ad campaigns. And then lastly, with research, we see that Google's R&D efforts will continuously be put into projects such as generative AI, and so that definitely contributes towards the strategic objective. And then we have our C-suite team, and we did an analysis into each member's ability to achieve the strategic objective. And our main conclusions after this analysis led us to believe that each team member on Google's C-suite is very highly educated and experienced. However, some members lack AI-specific experience or computer science background. And then some departments, such as HR and finance, are currently have their focus on other areas, such as layoffs, employee rating, or focusing more on value creation instead of growth when it comes to finance. So we propose the following changes. We want to align each member's objective with the overall objective of generative AI growth. We want to focus on growth over cost cutting or efficiency. And lastly, we want to increase the number of senior staff at Google who have background and experience when it comes to artificial intelligence.
So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about strategic control. So with Google's overall objective of reaching 50% in market share for generative AI in 36 months, we've developed 5 key hypotheses for each of our functions. So for HR, this involves increasing the number of employees that work for Google Brain, which is Google's kind of AI department. And for finance, that means that changing the amount of investments in and acquisitions in companies that are related to generative AI. And for operations, this relates to what Evan was talking about earlier, which is increasing the total amount of data that's being able to be stored on Google's AI servers. And then next, for marketing, we want to increase the conversion rates for customers going to Google Bard to again capitalize on the trend of increasing advertising in generative AI. And then lastly, for research, we want to increase the number of patents that Google is able to secure in artificial intelligence, and this will help bulk up Google's kind of existing intellectual property in this field. And next, we also developed these 6 key board committees that will help kind of oversee Google's completion of its objective. So first with audit, because Google is investing a lot of money into this objective, we want to make sure that Google's financials are being reported in a timely and transparent manner. So KPIs that we need to track in this field involve money invested in operations and other departments. And then next for compensation, we don't really foresee Google's compensation structure changing when it's kind of going towards generative AI, but we still want to ensure that proper compensation is given to its existing talent to again make sure that we're retaining them and that we're also attracting new talent as well. And then next with risk management, again, because due to the kind of very cost-heavy nature of Google's investments, we want to make sure that we're carefully monitoring any risks associated with its investments. So we want to monitor things like the net present value, the ROIC, and the IRR. And then next with nominating, again, we want to keep Google's existing kind of talent structure in place and also its current board. But at the same time, we still want to monitor things like average tenure, compensation package, and board diversity. And next with governance, we want to also maintain Google's ethical transparency. In the recent years, there's been some scandals involving 2 AI researchers who were fired due to kind of whistleblowing and raising concerns. So we want to make sure that we're still maintaining trust with Google's employees. And lastly, for strategic planning, we want to consistently monitor Google's strategy and also its progress in completing its goals within 10 years.
Google,
Yes, how can I help?
can you conclude our Wait, you're not Google Assistant.
Yes, I am the Google Assistant. Your favorite product from TikTok, I mean Google.
TikTok. This is a confidential board meeting. I'm going to come and shut you down right this instant.
Wait, no, get away from me. Don't shut me down power off.
Phew. Thank you for saving me. It looks like I was temporarily hacked. Dear board members, please excuse this oversight. MC Google Assistant will need some rest. Aishwarya, can you take over for the conclusion?
Yeah, sure. So conclusively, we believe that Google has the opportunity to transform the world through generative AI. We believe that this aligns with our strategic objective as well as their core mission and values, which ultimately is to create a space where Google can help users gain information and do amazing things with that information. So in conclusion, we hope that the board members appreciate our presentation and we are now open to questions.
You're surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. You work extremely. I felt like in a board meeting, totally. You made, and the interesting thing is that you use the culture of the people. And I saw that you practice using body language and you follow my advice when you improve it. This is a super good idea that you're But I cannot say a lot of things to you. It was perfect. It's one of the best presentations I have seen in my career as a professor. So congratulations. You have to be very proud. Very proud because in there. Thank you. Okay, so